You must definitely avoid this huge mistake I also did when I first started out using pastels.
Back then, I was always in such a rush to finish my drawings that I'd skip this super important step, but in this tutorial, I'm going to show you why it actually makes a big difference. I notice a lot of beginners making the same mistake, overlooking this important part of the drawing process.
This is a very common mistake, and becoming aware of it is going to improve your pastel work for sure. And the biggest mistake is skipping the underpainting. A very important step when you're creating your artwork, which is mostly overlooked, is to create an underpainting first. But what is this underpainting?
It's like the foundation or a roadmap for your artwork, helping you know where everything goes later on, like shadows, highlights, and details. Plus, this underpainting helps smooth out the paper's texture, making it easier to apply more layers. With pastels, the first few layers are key, especially if you apply them lightly without overloading the pigment.
Many beginners just jump right into creating layers and adding colors without creating a base first.
However, there are still some crucial steps to follow, and they're essential for the final quality of your artwork. The whole point of creating is to enjoy the process, from the underpainting to those final highlights. You know the saying, haste makes waste. That definitely holds true for artists as well.
But why do beginners skip this step?
One reason could be that they're unfamiliar with the concept of underpainting. When people watch artists on Instagram, they tend to focus on the point where the artwork starts looking realistic, often missing the earlier steps like the underpainting. If you check out pastel artists on Instagram, most begin with base layers using soft pastels or pencils to block in colors. That initial stage never looks polished. It's usually messy and chaotic, but trust me, you've got to trust the process.
Why skipping the underpainting is a problem. As I have already mentioned, this is a very fundamental step in your drawing or painting.
It's like a baker trying to make a cake without first prepping the dough to get that soft, spongy base. Without it, the cake just won't turn out right, and the same goes for your artwork. Without that base, you'd have nothing to work with. Just like with drawing, if you skip the underpainting, you'll struggle to build up the details and layers later on. To show you what I mean, I erased a section of my older drawing and redid it. The underpainting is like the dough of your artwork, and the colors and details you add later are the creams and decorations. Without that solid base, everything else just won't come together as smoothly. This makes the whole process much easier and ensures a higher final quality for the drawing. Skipping this step can also mess with the structure and depth of your artwork. Without a proper base layer, your drawing might lack the necessary contrast between light and dark areas, which is essential for creating realism. Strong contrast is what makes a drawing stand out and feel dynamic. Another downside of skipping this step is that you may find that the colors on top don't blend as smoothly or look uneven, which can affect the overall quality of your final piece.
Now let's learn how to fix this mistake. First, use the underpainting to map out values.
Let's take this base layer as an example for creating animal fur. To begin, you should start by blocking out simple tonal or color areas to define the light, mid, and dark parts. This step will guide the rest of the process and help give depth to the final layers. The key here is not to overload the paper with pigment too early. Pastels, as fun as they are, can oversaturate the paper's texture quickly, so you want to build it up gradually. It's like laying a foundation. You want to go slow and steady to get the contrast and shading right. For the base layer, I usually go with pastel sticks because they cover larger areas faster, but pastel pencils work too, though they take more time. As you work, make sure you're not pressing too hard. You don't want to fill in the paper's texture too much. This will allow you to add more layers later without running into problems. It's best to start with the darkest shades and slowly move toward lighter ones. But one of the most wonderful things about pastels is their flexibility. You can add light colors on top of dark ones and blend them to get the effect you need. This underpainting also serves as a roadmap. Once it's down, you'll know where every highlight, shadow, and detail needs to go just by looking at it. It's like a visual guide through your drawing. Artists, like hikers, need a map to lead them through the creative process, and that's exactly what your base layer will do. It's also useful for covering the paper's texture and color, which is super satisfying because it feels like you've made a ton of progress, even though you've just laid down the first colors. One big tip: if you accidentally add too much pigment, don't stress. A kneaded eraser can lift off excess pastel without damaging the surface too much. While the texture might not return exactly to how it was, it will still allow you to keep adding more layers. Now, I'll be honest, underpainting isn't my favorite part. For me, the real fun comes with adding details, but over time, I've learned that every step of the process is important. Accepting that has made a big difference in my work.
Then add details.
To really see if this underpainting is doing its job, let's try adding some details on top. I'm not trying to create a masterpiece right now, just want to show you how much this step helps the process. With the base layer down, each new layer of pencil will blend much better because it has something to grip onto. Think of it like snow piling up. Once there's already snow on the ground, each new snowfall sticks more easily, but when the ground is bare, that first layer has a harder time forming because there's nothing for it to cling to. It's the same with adding layers of detail. Every new layer is like fresh snow that builds on the previous one, making it easier to blend and refine your work. Sure, you could skip the base layer and just add details directly to the paper, but why make things harder for yourself? Without a base, everything takes longer and becomes more of a hassle. See how much smoother the process becomes when the base is already in place. The pencil glides effortlessly, making the details more refined and clean. The base layer makes everything easier and allows you to build up layers without fighting the texture of the paper. It's a simple step that makes a big difference in how polished the final result looks. This quick comparison should be enough to show why starting with an underpainting will make your life so much easier. It gives you a solid foundation to work from and improves your chances of getting great results. I'm really happy with the final result. This quick first study only took me half an hour, which I think is pretty efficient. This fast result was definitely thanks to the underpainting, which made the whole process much quicker.
Now let's look at some practical tips to get the most out of your underpainting. The first one is to choose the right materials.
Good quality pastel paper is essential for a solid drawing. It holds pigment well, lets you build smooth layers, and can handle multiple layers without falling apart, making it much easier to create vibrant contrasts and details. For me, the absolute best paper for pastels is Clairefontaine Pastel Matte. I mention it every chance I get. Try it once, and I promise you'll be hooked, just like I was from the first use. And of course, the quality of your pastels is just as important. It can make or break your results. Higher quality, more premium pastels tend to give you way better results than cheaper ones that often fall short.
Choosing the right materials is a very important step, and it can either help or hinder your process.
But if you go with high quality blending tools, like my personal favorite, soft tools, you'll really feel the difference. The pastel pigment goes on so much smoother, almost like it's melting into the paper. With these tools, you're not just pushing the pigment around endlessly, instead, it actually sticks and builds up nicely. It's a way easier, faster, and more satisfying process. If you're looking for a cheaper alternative, a cotton swab can do an acceptable job. The downside is that it's tiny, so it'll take a lot of time to cover larger areas, but it's perfect for working in small, detailed sections.
Blend them lightly to avoid overpowering the final layers. This means you have to be very careful of how much pastel you apply to your paper. As I mentioned earlier, if you aren't being careful from the start with underpainting and apply too much pigment, you are going to face a lot of challenges later on and end up doing a lot of retouching.
You might be asking yourself, can I erase pastels from sandpaper paper? And if so, how? The answer is yes, you can. A kneaded eraser is your best friend here. It can lift some of the pigment off without too much hassle. Just keep in mind that it won't take everything away completely. If you go overboard with the erasing though, you could end up damaging the paper, which isn't what we want. So, it's all about finding that sweet spot and being a little cautious.
You don't have to overcomplicate it. Don't try to create a full drawing from scratch and apply everything you've learned in this tutorial.
I'd suggest starting off small, grab a little piece of paper and cut it down to a manageable size. Then, do a quick underpainting with just a few layers. Don't worry about making it super detailed. The goal here is just to get comfortable with the process. After that, try adding some details on top, like random lines or simple shapes. It's a great way to practice without feeling overwhelmed.
This will help you ease into the process and see the benefits right away without getting overwhelmed from the beginning. Keep it simple with broad strokes to plan your values.
When you're diving into the underpainting, keep it simple. Focus on blocking in the main areas of light, medium, and dark tones using broad, loose strokes. Don't stress about details at this stage. The goal is to establish the overall structure of your drawing. By mapping out your values early with these broad strokes, you're creating a strong foundation for depth and contrast. This way, when it comes time to add those finer details later, everything will flow much more smoothly and easily.
Again, one of the biggest mistakes you can make in your pastel art is skipping the underpainting, which plays a huge role in planning the structure and adding depth to your artwork. I really encourage to give underpainting a try in your next artwork and see what a huge difference it makes. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and also press that bell notification to be notified every time I'm going to post a new tutorial. I normally upload one time a week and you don't want to miss that. Also, if you want to be a part of my community here, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching and I'm looking forward to see you in my next tutorials as well.